Welcome, everybody, to This Week in Legal Blogging for September 24th, 2020. This is the program in which we talk with leading bloggers from across the legal industry. It's produced and presented by lexblog.com. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I write a blog called Law Sites and also have a podcast called Law Next. Just before we get started, a reminder that this is a weekly program. You can find all of our past episodes at youtube.com/lexblog. And I'll tell you who next week's guest is going to be, so you can look forward to that. That's going to be Dan Schwartz, author of the Connecticut Employment Law blog. But turning to this week's guest, I'm very happy to have an old friend and very well-known blogger, Jean O'Grady. Jean, how are you?
Very well, Bob. Very happy to be here, and thanks to you and Colin for inviting me.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good to see you, even if virtually. It's been. We were just chatting before we started on how long it's been since we've seen actual human beings in live context. So looking forward to when we can do that again. I didn't even introduce the name of your blog, but you are the author of the blog, Dewey B Strategic, and you, in your day job, are Director of Research and Knowledge at DLA Piper. So tell us just sort of generally about your blog, what you cover, what you do.
Sure. Okay, well, I started my blog back in 2011. It is astonishing to me. It's going to be 10 years old next February.
And baby, that's a baby.
I didn't, the two primary reasons I started it were that at that point, there were not many women bloggers. And I kept thinking to myself, somebody should do this, somebody should do this. And one day I got the, why not you? And then around that same time, there were a number of articles in the legal press really demeaning librarians and sort of taking the very traditional view of, well, books are gone, we don't need these people called librarians anyway. And the librarian community would sort of like get all into a lather. And I realized, we really need people to start, we need to get our own platforms and we need to start speaking out. And so obviously, I think that, people like Greg Lambert and myself and Marlene now, I mean, there have been a number of people who came along, and even people like yourself and Ron Friedman understand and are advocates for the importance of information professionals and knowledge managers. But it was a pretty bleak. There wasn't actually a lot of awareness, I think, at that time of how librarians contribute to not only the practice of law, but the business of law, because we were the people bringing in business tools, intelligence tools, analytic tools. And it was like, and people would sort of dismiss you as, oh, you shelved the books. And so we needed louder voices and voices that would be taken seriously to advocate for the profession. Yeah. And so those were two of the reasons. And it's funny because one of the, you also, I started the blog first. I reached out to people I was friendly with, Ron Friedman and Greg Lambert, and I talked to younger colleagues. I had no idea how to create a blog. So I worked with two colleagues, Stacy Panglinan and Sean Rebstock, and they helped me technically get it together. And I knew I wanted a catchy name like Three Geeks in a Law. The law,
which is Greg's blog.
What does that even mean? I didn't know what it meant, but I wanted a catchy name. And I liked Adam Smith Esquire, and Above the Law was sort of like I don't know what you call it. It's like it's like a little wordplay.
Yeah.
And Three Geeks. And then one day I was literally sitting at my desk and Dewey B Strategic popped into my head, because the challenge I was trying to address is answering the question, are librarians strategic? And it was a play on that problem. So I actually think that having a memorable name is a really a good asset for a blog.
Yeah.
And then I went to Greg.
And that wasn't a play on Huey, Dewey, and Louie. That was a play on Melville Dewey.
No. And okay, now here's a sort of a funny thing. I went to Greg Lambert and I asked for his advice. And he said that when I published my first post, he would promote it. And I went back and I just looked now. I hadn't looked at it in years. His first post about my first post was Dewey B Strategic comes out swinging. And that was because I actually had come up with a blog post about, it was sort of about bad behavior by vendors. Like we were in law firms, vendors always position themselves as we're your partner. And I was looking at all the ways in which efficiencies were driven into law firm by vendors with bad practices. Like we would spend hours resolving billing problems or they'd ship the wrong, and this is back in the paper days, but even figuring out like Lexis and Westlaw bills, there was a lot of unnecessary clerical effort that was generated by vendors. So my first blog was, why don't we shift these costs back to the vendors and then they will fix these problems? And it wasn't, I mean, it was just saying something loud and controversial. And I didn't even realize that it was that controversial, but it was. And so Greg reposted that and it got attention. And then a few weeks later,
I think you've had their attention ever since.
Yes. A few weeks later, I came up with an even more controversial topic, which is called The Myth and the Madness of Cost-Effective Legal Research, which was really about, at that point, in Lexis and Westlaw each, there were probably, I calculate there must have been 500,000 price points because it depended on what file you used, how you printed out, whether you went into an included file, an excluded file, and all different files had price points. And we were watching as, even though firms were bringing in these powerful new tools, associates were terrified of them because they couldn't figure out how to control the costs. And I said, let's all stand back. This is madness. The goal is to get the answers for the clients. We have to stop obsessing about the pricing, and the burden should be on the vendors to come up with simple pricing so associates aren't terrified. Well, that one, I literally watched the hits on my blog go through the roof because it went around the academic community and people were furious because they thought I was criticizing the notion of training people on legal research, which was not the point. Training people on legal research was important. It was just the whole rolling the complexities of pricing into it was what made it impossible. So those couple of things are what really got my blog on the map.
Yeah. So you really saw yourself as an advocate right from the start, right from the time you launched.
Right. Both for the profession and for sort of to be a pebble in the shoe of the legal publishing industry. And it's interesting because I know for a fact that because of people like myself and Greg who have acted as watchdogs, it has changed behavior, and vendors are careful about what they do because they know it's going to be spoken about. And I have even had executives call me up before they did something and they said, we're thinking about doing this. How are you going to react? Yeah. And I have said, I'm going to react very badly. Your customers are going to feel ripped off. Now, it doesn't always work, but that particular vendor at that point did roll back and they never implemented the policy. Yeah. But not everything I complain about gets fixed, but I think it's still important to be out there and have a voice of advocacy.
I've had vendors say that to me about you, that we're really worried what Gene O'Grady is going to think about this. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. What about me? So yeah, no, you're a pebble in their shoe in a good way. I mean, you're not a pebble in the shoe just to be bothersome. You're a pebble in the shoe about issues that they really need to be thinking about and talking about and acting on. And I think that's probably one of the things that's helped develop your readership over the years, is that people understand that and respect that.
Yeah, and I try to be fair. I mean, I don't want anybody to lose their job, obviously, but I do want people. And I try and put a lot of care into fact checking. My big vulnerability is editing. I don't have a good editor, and I have friends who have, especially a colleague named Deb, who is constantly emailing me in the morning, like, you missed this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get those emails every day too. You misspelled something.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I don't have to ask you how you got attention for your blog in the early days, because it sounded like that happened pretty organically. I mean, did you begin to develop an audience and a readership right away?
Pretty, especially after the Myth and the Madness post. Then like I said, I saw that day the chart was going up like crazy. I just watched readers coming to the site, and it's just evolved over time. And I know it's funny because I know it's a very wide swath. Like I know partners in law firms that read my blog, or I have friends who say, "Oh, my husband or my cousin told me about your blog." And people I don't expect. I mean, I know that investment advisors who cover the legal industry, legal publishing industry, and legal tech industry read my blog. So I'm surprised. And of course, my colleagues, and I have to say it's really heartbreaking. So many of my colleagues have retired. I'm like, oh no, I lost another reader.
Yeah. I mean, my sense is that you and I have very, very overlapping audiences in a lot of ways.
Sure.
I know a lot of the people, I have a lot of information professionals who read my blog, and a lot of industry people who read my blog. And I just know that a lot of the people that I talk to about the stories that I'm covering either have just gotten off the phone with you or about to get on the phone with you.
I know. I really do regard you as my main competitor. Like, oh God, did he get that out 5 minutes before me?
It feels that way sometimes. I know.
I know.
We're friendly competitors.
Friendly competition.
Yeah. No, I think, I actually think it's interesting, because I think if you generally have given that you are actually an information professional and I am not, you often have a much more sort of nuanced take on a lot of the stories that come out, and that sort of, from the trenches take on things, in a sense. I mean, I think you understand a lot of this news. You have a perspective on a lot of the stuff that I just don't have and will never have. And I think that's really, I find it really useful. I mean, if you have already written about something that I've written about, I'm always going to look and see what you said about it, because I really value your opinion. So,
well, the other thing I think I have is a very long view, because I have literally watched the evolution of digital research from the very beginning. I remember the washing machine size Lexus terminal being rolled into Pace University Law School. That was where I had my first law librarian job, and I remember the day they brought the first terminal into the law library. So I have watched the complete evolution from online legal research being viewed as somewhat exotic and something you could live without, and now we are living in a world of digital analytics and trend spotting and predictions. I mean, it is breathtaking how much what is considered legal research has changed over 30 years and maybe 40 years. Yeah.
It's interesting, because something else I think we have in common is some of the people I speak to as part of this program, or other bloggers that I speak to in the legal world, are blogging. They blog for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is to bring in clients or bring in business. I don't get business from my blog, and I don't think you don't get business. You have a day job, and
right. I've gotten opportunities to speak all around the world. I think that's nice. And I've gotten some editorial opportunities. I mean, I think if it's ever going to do anything, it's like when I retire, there'll be lots of opportunity for my next career.
Right. No, I mean, it opens doors in lots of ways, but I mean, it's not a direct sort of marketing play. It obviously, blogging raises your voice as a thought leader, an influencer, all of those, buzzword terms, but it's not something you're doing, for financial gain, really, for directly in any way. And I'm sure it's helped. I mean, do you think it's changed your career? I don't even know. Have you changed jobs since you've been blogging?
No, I have not changed jobs since I've had it. Like I said, I think it actually would be more of an opportunity legal publishing or something. And plus, I love writing. I love following the stories. I mean, I think maybe I was always a frustrated journalist, and it got me an opportunity. It's sort of like fantasy baseball, fantasy journalism, and and I sort of have my own disciplines and routines about it. The other great thing, and this always makes me laugh, I think it has. I mean, it goes back to, it really is a strange passion, because I love understanding information and I love watching new things happen. And I love small companies that come up and can possibly disrupt what is going on. Because I do think, I mean, Lexus, Wessel, they are all great companies. But I love it when these little companies come along and they have a new idea and they are seeing an opportunity that no one in the big company saw. And it makes me laugh when I will be at a conference and these young San Francisco startup types of young people come up to me and say, "Oh, you're Gene O'Grady. I really want to talk to you." And I just laugh because, I'm a baby boomer, and they really want my advice on positioning their product, or please come over. And I have a very funny story about having been at AALL, and this is and Pablo from Case Text waiting in a room where I was going to speak, and he waited in the room and said, "I want to show you a Case Text. They had barely launched the product, and he said, I really need you to tell me what you think." So it's things like that are just wonderful. It's just been great. And plus, I know, like, Ed and Phil from Fastcase from decades ago, it's great to watch companies evolve from not even having a booth at a conference to build themselves up into a serious market player. I love I guess it's vicarious excitement, and I like helping entrepreneurs get a shot. The other thing I also find fascinating, and I do a fair amount of this, is interviewing former lawyers who are sitting at their desks saying there's got to be a better way. And they find a way to translate their frustration into a new product. I love talking to those people. And I wish I had come up with my own products, but I'd be very, very happy to see how people have the stamina and the dedication to develop new ideas.
I feel like we've done a Vulcan mind meld as I'm listening to you, because I feel the same way about blogging in so many ways. And I wonder if one of the things that it almost sort of troubles me about that is that I have, like you, I've been following a lot of these people for a long time. I've gotten to know a lot of them for a long time. And I've, always got this sort of journalistic objectivity hat on. And sometimes it's hard to stay objective because you start to kind of root for some of these people. I mean, as you mentioned, some of the smaller companies that have a really great idea and are coming along and building up a customer base and, looking for funding or whatever. And, I find myself rooting for them in a lot of cases, or not, depending on the company. But I mean, I do certainly form opinions about people, and even kind of what become friendships with some of these people who are involved in these companies. And I sometimes wonder over the years whether that influences my writing. I'm sure it does in some ways. I'm sure in some ways it probably influences the stories I end up deciding to cover or not, because there's more than enough to cover. Just can't get to most of it that's going on out there. So I don't know. Have you ever thought about that? Or?
I have two responses to that. One is, if I see a shortcoming, I try and be honest about that. I don't try.
I try and be honest.
But I don't. Years ago, this is way before I was a blogger. Somebody had invented this. I don't know. I think it was a rules of civil procedure digital thing. It was awful. And I wrote a really honest review for some magazine, and they didn't publish it. And I was really pissed. And I think it was just because I was so brutally honest. I don't know. It never got published. But, maybe that put a little bit of thought in the back of my head. Maybe there's a thing as being too brutal. But the other thing is, from my day job, what I have learned is that competition is necessary. Competition is good. And the size and the footprint of the larger players is so good, so vast compared to the startups. They do need to have people rooting for them.
Right.
You know, they do need to have people learning about what they're doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me put you on a spot and ask: Is there a particular sort of small company story that jumps out at you as one of your favorites of how they've developed?
Well, I mean, there's so many. I mean, like
Yeah.
I love having watched the entire arc of Fast Case
Yep.
to go from something just pure case law into
Yeah.
they have a multifaceted, you know, they I think are on the verge of being direct competitors to Lexus and Westlaw. That is amazing to me to
Yeah.
have watched them grow. But you know, I just you know, I'm blanking on something.
Yeah.
There's,
Well, it's
there's
okay. Yeah,
oh,
I don't want
no,
to
no,
put you on the spot.
I'm trying to think because I've interviewed so many different people in the past a couple of weeks. Um, I guess I'm particularly fascinated by products that take something we've had all along and show us how to get new insights. Like Daniel and Nick at Ravel when
Yeah.
they first
Daniel
came out
Lewis and
with Ravel, they had the data that Lexus and Westlaw had all along, and they figured out a way to get new insights into judges' behavior.
yeah.
Um, you know, the Trellis. I
Yeah.
interviewed Nicole from Trellis a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago. She is aggregating documents from state courts and
Yeah.
state courts. I think you know this.
Yeah.
State court, that's where a lot of the energy is right now, is figuring out how do you make the killer state court
Right.
product. Is it on the
Yeah.
analytics side? Is it on the docket side? And Trellis has taken a little bit of a different emphasis, and they are aggregating the documents within state court filing. So it's
Right.
fascinating to me to see the different ways people even take a space, a subspace in the market and approach it differently.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, you're director of research and knowledge at DLA Piper. How does your firm react to your blogging, and do you feel a need to kind of maintain sort of a line between your blogging and your day job?
Absolutely. It's not an arm. I have to, I'm always telling people. In fact, you shouldn't be mentioning my firm, because it has.
All right, everybody out there listening, forget you heard that.
Yes, it's totally my my initiative. I do it at night. It doesn't bleed over into the day. It's something I do at night. I absolutely believe it inures benefit to the firm because I know about so many products,
yeah.
And there isn't a vendor on earth that won't take my phone call if I have a problem. So
right.
so indirectly there's a benefit, but I have. And I talked to Greg Lambert about that before I started my blog. And he said it's really, really important that you always make it clear this is your opinion, you're working on your own. And I actually have a funny story related to that, which is the second phone call I got the day my blog launched was from the library director at Dewey Ballantine, who said, "You have got to change the name of your blog. People are going to think it's published by Dewey Ballantine." And so I went to a partner at my firm in intellectual property, and I said, "What do I do?" And she told me to put a disclaimer. And here's the punchline: who knew my blog would last longer than the Dewey Ballantine law firm?
Yeah. Good thing you didn't change your name. There is, I'm sure that you've seen the same thing that I've seen, which is in the 11 years that you've been doing this. I've been following this industry even longer than that. The quantity of news has skyrocketed or snowballed. I mean, there is just so much going on, and I'm getting pitched, constantly all day long by any number of people. And any number of new products coming along. How do you decide? How do you balance your time? How do you decide what you're going to write about? Do you have a routine around it? How do you manage all of that?
It's definitely based on time available, because I have lots of other things going on in my life. And so if I don't, sometimes
See, I have nothing else going on in my
I have to postpone
life.
doing things. But it's am I interested in it? Do I think do I think I have the expertise to evaluate the product? I mean, 'cause sometimes people come to me with products like, I have no idea. I wouldn't be a good, it's just
Right.
not a good fit.
Right.
So I tend to focus on things where I feel like I can add some value or some insight, or I'm genuinely curious about what they're doing.
Yeah. And do you have a schedule or a routine around blogging? Do you try and blog? How often do you try to blog? And
I like to blog twice a week. I don't always get to do it. One of the things Ron Friedman warned me about in the beginning, he said, try and blog every day. I mean, every week. And he said, because if your blog gets stale, people won't come back. So I have tried to keep at least once a week, but there have been times when I've had to go a month, when you're traveling on vacation or something. Sometimes it goes longer, but I think then you make up for it with like 3 blogs the following week.
right. Yeah. Has this period that we're in now with the pandemic and everybody staying from home, has it caused you to write more often, or has
No,
it changed anything about your blogging?
no, well, I did think in a way everybody was in shock. I felt like I was getting fewer pitches in the beginning. I felt like
Yeah.
that the whole marketplace was in confusion. No, but actually I did get to write quite a bit about how legal publishers were responding to COVID, and a lot of them very, very quickly pivoted to try and put up free information, whether it was analytics or documents or, different kinds of things. People put up toolkits. I did keep like a running list at one point of different things the vendors were doing. So that was interesting to see how they responded.
Yeah. Have you seen you're kind of focused on the legal information industry, I guess. Have you seen? I mean, what's sort of the state of blogging within that industry? Have there been many more blogs that have come along that are covering
Well,
that area, or?
I think there's fewer because, Greg obviously has switched mostly to doing podcasts.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's the Ginger Librarian. I'm not really
Yeah.
that aware of a lot of new ones.
Yeah.
And I met her at a conference and I was like, keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep it up. She has a good voice. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. You can't start a blog because you feel like having a blog. You
Yeah.
have to start a blog because you have something to say and you're
Right.
something you're passionate about. And you have to be a reasonably articulate writer. And that's the one thing I think has changed is I think I have learned to write a lot faster. I mean, there have been times, and there's still sometimes when it's just agony to write. Like I will have an idea and it never comes together, and I just have to drop it.
Yeah.
But I think somehow I have developed a skill to be able to turn something that is reasonable around in a few hours, where
Yeah.
it used to be agony.
Yeah. Sometimes it's still agony. Depends on what you're writing about, right? Like
Yeah.
you say, if it's something you're excited about or interested in, it's so much easier than when it's something that's like, I feel like I should write about this, but it doesn't really excite me that much. But maybe you don't do as much of that kind of stuff. I end up covering a lot of stuff, and sometimes I just feel like it's it's newsworthy, but it doesn't excite me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the availability of time, if you're not excited about it, you just can't find the time. I don't know. So, but
Yeah.
I had some great ideas that I never got off the ground, and I still have the folders. Like I started collecting materials, and maybe someday I'll get back to them. But I don't know. It is tough, and so again, the pressure to keep the blog alive. You focus on what can I get out this week, and sometimes that pushes away the more maybe the more important issues. I mean, one of the things I've wrote about that, and I don't think there's been as much of an opportunity lately, when AALL was going to change their name to the Association for Legal Information. I felt very passionately that we should drop the word librarian, and that was very controversial because people have a passionate identification with their profession. But on the other hand, I believe, as a woman who has been in the legal profession for 40 years, I think that being identified by librarians, at least in law firms, has inhibited the growth or the upward mobility of librarians within law firms. Because it's like, does the word librarian open doors for you or close doors? And like it or not, I don't think it has been an empowering name. And, years ago, and this is one of the things that shocked me, I did a post. It was about our librarians wearing an invisible glass ceiling. And I tracked in that post when law librarians had been in law firms at least since 1930s. IT people came in the 70s, marketing people came in the 80s, and everyone had leapfrogged over librarians to the C-suite. Why were librarians not recognized for so long? And so one of my ongoing passions, is I want the next generation of librarians to have opportunities. I don't want them to face stereotyping. I don't want other people coming along and taking what they do and rebranding it as something else.
Right.
And that was one blog post that didn't get much traction at all. I mean, I was really surprised that that one, I thought it was one of the best blog posts I ever wrote, and it hardly anything.
Huh. I mean, but that was also. I mean, I remember what's the program that takes place the day before
The summit. Yes.
Yeah, and you were the chair of it, or the president, or whatever, one year when that was kind of the topic of discussion that year.
Yeah.
I forget what year that was, but 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I don't know.
I think it's longer than that.
Longer than that. Okay. But no, I kind of agree with you on that. And I mean, it really goes back to what you were saying for why you started the blog in the first place, which is that there was all this sort of talk about law libraries dying and libraries becoming the sort of, thing of the past, a sort of dinosaur. And people still associate, I think so many people still really have no idea what the job of a law librarian is, or what they do, or what they can do. And so, I think by relabeling the position, you're opening up possibilities, as you suggested, and opening up people's eyes to the possibilities for what these professionals can do and what they do. So if you were if somebody were to come to you today and say, I'm a younger legal professional, information professional in the legal area, and I'd like to start a blog, would you tell them don't do it because I've got the territory sewn up? Or what advice would you give somebody who wanted to start it?
Find something you're passionate about. I think the important thing is to have both enthusiasm and expertise. Those two things really help. And, develop friends. I mean, it's been one of the best things has been the way it has just exploded my network. I know people like you and Colin, and, when I go to conferences, I always I have an excuse to talk to anybody,
You're a rock star when you go to conferences.
Yeah, it's really, really been nice the social part of it, in terms of learning more. It is like endless learning, because I have picked, I'm not talking, I'm talking about a market segment that is exploding with innovation, so you can basically never get bored, because there's always something around the corner.
Yeah. Do you to the extent it's built out your network like that, do you engage with that network through means other than your blog? I mean, in other words, are you big on social media? Are you engaging with people in other ways?
I am not very good outside of my blog. Maybe it's generational. I am pretty much not on Facebook. And I think somebody told me, oh, you need to be on Facebook. I'm not anywhere. I have a fair number of followers on LinkedIn. I'm not great on Twitter. So mostly it's my blog. And I think I probably could have, I'm sure Lex being on Lex blog probably helps a lot in terms of getting me exposed to more places, and then having the ABA blog awards probably helped me get, because I'm listed on the ABA. So there's been things like that, but I think it's more generational. I just have not really pursued. There's probably a lot of opportunity there, and a younger person would know how to exploit that better than I did. So go get it. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. I don't know if it's an age thing. I think I'm probably older than you, and I'm on Twitter and all of those things. So it's not exactly an age thing, but one of the interesting things about that is that what starts to I don't know if you get this as well as much as I do, but now I no longer get pitched just through my email. I'm getting pitched through my LinkedIn and through my Twitter, and people texting me and every other, and I just can't even keep up with it. I mean, I was looking at my LinkedIn last night, and I had these messages from 2 weeks ago that I had never seen. People telling me about products that were about to break. By the time I saw them, it was too late. So sorry. So I don't know if you get that problem with people just like coming at you from every direction, wanting you to write about them.
Right. I haven't more from LinkedIn. That is absolutely happening. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what any other kind of final thoughts or closing thoughts or advice you want to share about blogging or about your experience?
I think the biggest thing for me to overcome before I started was fear of being criticized. I mean, that was a really big fear of, like, I'm going to say something out in the world, and sometimes people are going to piss me off and be mad at me. And it was almost a relief, because that happened early on when I did that blog post about the myth and the madness of cost-effective legal research. I got that all out of the way early. And, if, there have been times when people misunderstood, or maybe I even got a fact wrong. If I am wrong, I will go back and I will admit it and correct it. I think that's the other thing, is you need to be fair to people. It's like, I always want to be viewed as being fair, and giving people a fair shot. So that's been important to me.
Yeah. I think I've learned over the years that you're probably going to piss somebody off almost every day. And as long as you are fair and continue to be fair, then ultimately people are going to know that about you. And those few times that you piss, or not those few times, as many times that you piss people off, that'll just kind of slide off, because others will respect the fact that you're fair. So. Well, Jean, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you and hear about your blog and to see you virtually. And I hope I get to see you sometime at a real conference soon.
Hopefully. Well, great. Thank you for asking me. It's really been fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I hope you are able to stay well. But
same to you.
Yeah. So we've been talking with Jean O'Grady of Dewey B Strategic, not Ballantine B Strategic or Piper B Strategic, but Dewey B Strategic. And you've been watching and listening to This Week in Legal Blogging. We will be back next week, where again our guest will be Dan Schwartz of the Connecticut Employment Law blog. You can catch this episode and all of our past episodes on YouTube at youtube.com/LexBlog. On behalf of everybody at lexblog.com, this is Bob Ambrogi. Thank you very much for watching.